Hello and happy gaming, everybody. My name is Dark Sage Walker, and I'm sure you can tell by the format what we're doing here. Yes, it's time for another tier list. This time we're going over the Hexawan spells in One Step from Eden. Now, the usual rules do apply, but I am kind of relaxing a little bit on the everything ranked in a bubble, because some things just don't work very well ranked by themselves. And other things, I just feel it's good to talk about what they should be, what you should be doing with them in order to make them better. Now, a lot of the spells in the Hexawan focus really work well with some spell power behind them. So those ones, I'll be sure to make some pretty special reference to them, as that's one of those things that's really going to make a difference with these spells. But otherwise, everything is the same as before. For the most part, everything gets rated in a bubble by usefulness, effectiveness, what it does for you, all the usual jazz. If you've seen my other tier list videos, you know what's going on. One Step from Eden has a lot of different brand focuses, so it makes good sense to separate all the spells out that way, because if we were to just do one big long tier list with every spell in the game, we'd be here a while. A good long while. So let's not delay any further, let's go ahead and get into it. And we're going to be starting with Beacon. This costs 2 mana, and it just summons a beacon that calls down flames every 3 seconds. Now, it is random what tile it summons it on, but it will be summoning it on the enemy side for sure. Beacons are a tricksy mistress, because as useful as it is to have these beacons calling down flames on your enemy side of the field, that also means that you don't necessarily want to drop them on the enemy side, because then they have the chance of lighting themselves on fire for that just wonderful self-dunk that everyone loves. Hold on a second. But you don't necessarily want to put them on your side, because because they'll start blocking off your dodging space. So, like I said, they're a very tricky one. They only come in with, I believe, 80 HP, so they can be killed pretty quickly. It's a tricky one. I've gotten good use out of the beacons, but I also am very aware that for the most part, you summon them, and then they just get blown up almost immediately, so it's a tricky one. I'm personally going to say B on this one. Actually, they are a little below average. I still say if you have at least a little bit of decent fire synergy and you're playing as someone who benefits from structures, i.e. Hazel, it's worth dropping in your deck to see if it works out for you if you have some fire synergy. If not, maybe skip over this one. Beam Crystals. These work pretty well for Teardown Hazel, and what they do is they summon 2 Beam Crystals that fire a piercing laser when destroyed. My big issue with the Beam Crystals is why are they summoned one right in front of the other on the same row? Why can't we find a way to place them on 2 different rows? Maybe not the same as the Blast Crystals, but it would be more useful to do it that way. Otherwise, same idea applies. They get destroyed and fire a piercing laser for 60 damage. They have 60 HP, so the whole idea is you destroy the one up front, it automatically destroys the other one for a 1-2. So I get the idea that they're going for. It's a little bit of a tricky way to get 120 damage. I also might be wrong on the damage of the beams themselves. It's been a while since I've used this spell. All that having been said, I would say for the mana cost and everything that goes along with it, I'm going to put it at a B. I think it belongs there because it's as difficult as it is to really get it to line up. It can also act as a bit of a temporary defense against your enemy shots. Just place the crystals on your enemy side of the field and watch them get locked down until they destroy it. And then they destroy it and boom, damage in the face. It's an interestingly efficient way to build up your defenses, or to try to get a quick offense as Teardown Hazel, because you only need to hit them once. And then Blast Crystals is a little bit of the same. Instead of being summoned on the same row, it summons them on the rows adjacent to you, so you summon them and then they go one above you, one below you. Again, they make for a very interesting defense. The shots that these fire when they get destroyed do 120 damage, so it's a little bit more worthwhile. Again, I'm going to put it here. It's about what you expect from the general structure build. And unfortunately, the idea of placing structures is a playstyle that I really like. It's just so unfortunate that, I mean, we're going to be getting to it, but a lot of them don't quite have the utility that I would like, and I'll explain what I mean by that as we get to it. Before then, we've got other things to get to, and we're going to start with blue bullets. Now, more people are familiar with actually minigun, so we're going to start with minigun. Minigun, let's scroll on down here to the minigun. Fires 12 shots, gain 1 Trinity. If Trinity is full, cast this twice. So it fires 12 shots for 5 damage each. That's a total of 60 damage for 1 mana. But if you have Trinity, it fires it twice, so that's 120 damage for 1 mana. So this is actually probably one of Hexawan's best spells. It fits well into Trinity decks. It really benefits from spell power. Like, again, if all you have is even just 1 spell power, it raises the overall damage of the spell by 12. It's an absolutely amazing little spell that I think can work in multiple builds. I'm not putting it at S though, because in order for this to really work, it's best for you to use it either A, against an enemy that's more or less sitting still, or B, for you to have some sort of time manipulation. So in other words, root, time slow, time stop. That's part of the minigun combo, so to speak. It also works out very well in a Trinity deck, so you put this in, say, with Violet, she can give herself Trinity stacks, then all you really need to look for is, say, time stop, and you're good. So this works out very well for someone like Violet, who can actually make the other Trinity spells work very well. And now that I've talked about minigun, let's go ahead and talk about blue bullets. Blue bullets. Shot damage equals current mana, so it costs 1 mana to fire. You get 20 shots, and they all do roughly X, where X is equal to whatever your current mana is. Now, for the most part, you want to build up to at least 5 maximum mana, which means the damage per shot is going to be 4. So it's a little bit less than minigun, but what gives it a little bit of an edge is that it's always doing 20 shots instead of 12. So I think blue bullets kind of belongs in the same spot. And again, if you've got a good spell power build, you're getting 20 shots at enhanced damage. It works out also very well. I very much like both blue bullets and minigun. I give the slightest edge to minigun because it does not require you to have a high maximum mana to get a lot out of it. Just some spell power and hey, you're golden. Magnifico. What did I just say? I think I was trying to say Magnifico, but my brain is not working. I apologize. Next up we have... I'm confused as to how one got before the other, but anyway, Bombard. Hit and crack 4 tiles away from each structure. Costs 1 mana and does 200 damage should it hit. So this is a very odd one. It does a lot of damage, true, but it also requires a little bit of precise. It requires precise aim, which is something that I'm not sure I'm too happy about. But then on top of that, you also have to have structures on the field for that to even do anything, and I don't know. The thing is, it's not horrible, but it does need other things to even be effective. So I don't know. I gotta put it where it belongs. I'm sorry. It might not be the worst spell in the world, but as far as Hexawan spells are concerned, and especially as far as my rules are concerned, yeah, that's a D spell. Sorry. It does a lot of damage, but difficulty aiming and sometimes not being able to do anything with it just really put it down at a bad spot. Bomb Toss is next. Bomb Toss. Throw a bomb that explodes when destroyed. It costs 2 mana. It, of course, is going to land the bomb at 4 tiles away, and it does 150 damage. Much more consistent than Bombard. This, for those of you who are aware, this is actually Gunner's starting spell. No matter what build he uses, he always starts with the old Bomb Toss. I quite like Bomb Toss. I've gotten a lot of good to happen because of Bomb Toss, and for things that count structures in case you need it, it does count as a structure, oddly enough. Even though you really just want it to get destroyed, so yeah, there you go. I think it works out. Castle. Summon 3 gun turrets in a column in front and then consume. So this costs 5 mana to use, so is it the most viable spell in the world? No, but you're almost always going to find it towards the end of a run anyway. My view on Castle is this spell gets you a really strong setup, and yes, it does cost a lot of mana, which hurts it a little bit. But as far as the turret summoning spells are concerned, this one summoning 3 at once is absolutely amazing. It gives you a wonderful base to start from, and you can start throwing down other turrets, start building up the ones that you have, because you're probably not going to take this as Teardown Hazel. Most other characters, if they upgrade the spell, they can make good use of it. But again, it's not a universal spell. I love it, but I think it belongs here. It's not quite an S grade, but it's definitely not B or lower. It very much belongs in that spot. Now, my big issue with it is that it consumes, and that's going to be a running theme for most of the turret summoning spells, is that you can only do them once. I don't really understand why, and I'll get into that when we get to the first one that consumes when you summon it. So, but yeah, in my opinion, if it cost a little bit less and maybe didn't consume, one or the other, or both, I would be totally happy putting Castle at a higher spot. As is, I'm aware that this is kind of my bias showing through, but this is one of the spells that I like to have 5 mana for. And it doesn't really matter who you're playing as all that much. You don't really want it for Teardown Hazel. Everyone else, it gives them a nice solid defense to start building up behind. And if you put it on like the front enemy tiles against the gate, it can just wreak havoc on the gate while you're setting up other things. And they won't last forever, but again, they just give you a good place to start from. That's the point. It's a defense. That's why they call it Castle. Cross Turret. Throw a cross turret 4 tiles away. It costs 2 mana. Each shot does 150 damage. I think the turret itself has the same amount of health. So, cross turret is a double-edged sword. You throw it out, it can cordon off a lot of space on the enemy side of the field. That's good. The shots also cross over into your side of the field. That's bad. The shots can do 150 damage to enemies when they hit. That's good. They also do 150 damage to you when they hit. That's bad. Also, the idea that it throws it 4 tiles away, so you have a hard time really even doing anything with it. Like, that's the thing about Cross Turret is I've gotten good use out of it, but I'd be lying if I said it hasn't put me in a self-destructive position before. So, I think simply because of the idea that it doesn't have a clause that say that you can't hit yourself, I gotta put it down here. It's really effective, but because you can destroy yourself with it so quickly by just not being careful of where the shots are landing, I'm sorry. And because you throw it 4 tiles away, you can't even really build it up with build-up Hazel, unless you throw it on the first tile of your enemy's field, and more often than not, that's not where the danger is. Sometimes, not gonna lie, sometimes, but not often. And it does have its uses. You can throw it down in a position where it'll strike behind a hostage. You can throw it onto the back enemy lines to try to take care of the enemies that like to hide back there behind other things like rocks and hostages and other things. I don't know, I just talked myself into elevating it into a B. Even still, I really wish that there was a clause on this that says that you can't hit yourself with it, because that really makes this it makes it for the most part not worth using. But because it's not something that you're really going to be focusing on building up, it is one of those turrets that's actually okay to use on other characters. Pardon me. Grail. Summon a Grail if it survives for 4 seconds. Heal 50 MP and gain 10 money, otherwise known as Sarah. Now you can only use this once, so it does, like every other healing spell, it does consume. But it's also not too difficult to find a spot to drop it where it'll survive for 4 seconds, and then it just drops the bonus right on top of you. So, and the idea that it's worth both 50 HP and 10 money, I put it up at A. I can't put it at S because 1, it is something that you have to pick up after it goes away. 2, it does consume, and 3, this thing only has 1 hit point, so you're taking a risk when you use it, just on the very idea of what it does. But if you get it to work, it is a heal, it's a little extra money. It's one of those things you really need to find early on for it to be worthwhile, but I think it's worth taking if you can find it quick. It's not a bad spell. Gun Turret. Build Hazel starts with this. It's very simple. You summon a gun turret. Nice and easy. I believe each shot does 20 damage, but it fires pretty quickly. It starts with 120 health, and I've got nothing else to say. This is a very simple structure. It's solid. I like gun turrets. Like, I'm not the biggest fan of them on other characters, but they are Hazel's bread and butter for sure. And if you can land a couple of solid upgrades on these, like the upgrades that I think are the most important for these are double cast and then double summoned HP. And again, even if they don't survive, these ones don't consume, so they can come back, they can create a defense. These can be useful on other characters, and I think they're well worth using if you know how to use them. You just don't want to block off your own walking space. Sorry about that. Had to get a little lemon lime goodness in my belly. Laser turret. So here's where we run into issues. So first of all, summon a laser turret. It costs 2 mana. It has the same 120 health, but this fires a piercing laser on the row that you summon it on, and I want to say it does like 100 to 120 damage, something along those lines, maybe 150. The issue I have with this spell is not necessarily the idea of it by itself. It's the idea that, for God knows whatever reason, the laser turret consumes. Why does this consume? I don't understand. Oh, okay. Actually, this spell might have changed. I'll have to have a look at this. I don't see it very often when I play, but I remember from what I said, or from what I've used, it does consume. Now, if it doesn't consume, then I believe, like, even if it is just an 80 damage laser, the idea that it costs less, has a piercing quality, and does more damage per shot than gun turret would put it up here. As is, I'm going to put it here with the addendum that if it doesn't consume, it definitely belongs in S grade. That is a wonderful, wonderful turret to have if it no longer consumes. I know on the original build when it first released, yes, the laser turret did consume. And that was stupid. There is no reason for it to consume. It was a silly design decision. It's like a tongue twister there. Say that 5 times fast. If it no longer consumes, then it's worth it. And I would definitely put it up at S rank. As is, I put it on the same grade as gun turret. Maybe a little bit lower because it goes away after you use it once. Mana Lattice. Summon a mana crystal. drops 4 mana when destroyed. So this is really only useful for Teardown Hazel, and for everyone else it's iffy. For the most part, there are other ways to get mana faster, including just plain old meditate, or, you know, just do what most of us do when we need mana. Wait a little bit. It has positive uses. You can use it to block off some space for attacks. It can do that, but for the most part, I think it belongs down here. Its uses are iffy at best. Minefield. Fill enemy field with mines. Costs 2 mana and just drops 16 mines on the enemy field. This spell is ridiculous. Not only is it common, not only does it cost 2 mana, but against enemies that like to walk around a lot, boy does that 30 damage per mine add up. That spell is just great. The only real issue I have with Minefield is that it does make it difficult to save hostages. But even then, most hostages can survive getting hit for 30 damage so long as everything else around them dies first. I've got no complaints. This is, again, a really good spell. Obviously, I put it up in S rank. It is one of it's one of Hexawan's just undeniably good spells. Even Castle, which I love, I have to knock it down a peg because it consumes and costs 5 mana. I understand why it costs 5 mana, but maybe make it so it doesn't consume, because that is supposed to be like your big defense move. I don't know. I just don't really understand why that one consumes. Mine. Plant a mine on a random enemy tile. It costs 2 mana, does 250 damage. That's actually pretty impressive. Here's the problem. Plant it on a random enemy tile. Random. If you ever felt like throwing your fate to the whims of chance, this is how you do it. Make it so that you have no control over what it's gonna do. You can throw it out, and it'll land directly on the enemy and make them go, "Ah, the pain!" Or you can throw it out, and it does nothing, because no one ever goes anywhere near it. Or worse, you throw it out, and guess what? You just blew up your hostage. My reasoning on my placement for this spell. You have one of 3 different outcomes. The outcome where you actually hit what you're looking to hit with it is 1 in 16. The outcome where nothing happens is generally 15 over 16. And the possibility where something happens that you don't want is really dependent on whether or not there are hostages even on the field. But in my opinion, a spell that basically takes 2 mana to do nothing, that's the same as a jam, and I'm sorry, but I find that to be near worthless. There's something to be said for spells that you don't have to think about very much, but when you remove all thought process from a spell and leave it to the whim of chance, then that's also what your chances of victory are. Nothing more than a glimmer of chance, a faint hope. And I don't know about you, but I would rather be in control of my destiny. So no, mine is terrible. Hate that spell. I absolutely will not take it. Monument. Summon a monument that falls, summon blocks, and deals 250 damage when destroyed. This spell is nuts. I recently played a build where I had Monument as Build Hazel, which seems silly, but I had plenty of means with which to destroy them, and with good timing, that 250 damage is pivotal. And it's not as hard to do as you think. I believe when the Monument falls, I'm going to quick look this up, but I believe it does damage to that entire row, not just on the 4... Pardon me. Not just on the 4 tiles where it hits. And even if that were the case, you can always just place it on your front row or on the front line of the enemy's tiles. And it serves 2 functions at that point. It can, 1, block enemy shots, and 2, once it gets destroyed, it's a huge retaliatory blow. And it only costs 2 mana. Monument is fantastic. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. That is a spell that I would take with any character. You can quick knock it down for a big 250 damage blow, and then it leaves... Oh, and here's the best part. When it falls down, it leaves walls behind that your opponents need to navigate around. Yeah, that spell is amazing. I don't know why I didn't use Monument all that much before, but there you go. It's good stuff. Salvage. Destroy a structure in front to gain 100 shield and restore max mana. It only costs 1, so it's not hard to use, but the problem is it's kind of dependent on whether or not you can summon structures. If you can't summon structures, then this has absolutely no purpose. It's actually just a waste of space, which is why I'm going to put it down here. However, if you do have structures, there's still better ways to get 100 shield, but I would at least put it up here because it's another option to get shielding. But for the most part, this is a spell you can safely ignore unless you're summoning a lot of structures. I believe Teardown Hazel starts with that, so, you know, little something there. You can use it with Build Hazel, especially to knock down that monument, but those are the only two that really start with any structures. With everyone else, you have to hope to get structures and build around getting salvage, and I just don't think it's worth it. Okay, so I don't know why that's... Oh, I know why, because I labeled it differently. Alright, I'm going to come back to the turret SD, because I label it as self-defense turret, which puts it up here, when in actuality it's actually called turret SD and belongs way over here, just kind of, you know, nothing, in nothing land. So I'll come back to that one. Shard Toss. Summon 2 shards on random enemy tiles that explode for 50 damage after 2.5 seconds. This spell is one of my most hated spells. And again, it's because I don't get to control what's going on. You just throw them out, and yes, they do damage to the entire area. But you're again talking about, first of all, it's after 2.5 seconds, so nearly 3 seconds of waiting for 50 damage? And the worst part is, it's going to kill your hostages. Like, I find the damage to it to be underwhelming, I hate the idea that I can't control it, and it kills your hostages. I'm sorry, I absolutely hate Shard Toss. That having been said, actually, there is the chance that it can hurt yourself, because if it drops on the front enemy tile and you accidentally walk in range of its explosion, you can hurt yourself. Huh. Look at that. I just talked myself out of its one redeeming quality. No, fuck that spell. I hate Shard Toss. The crude fact of the matter is it probably belongs in C rank, and, you know, just for the sake of it, I will put it up there. But don't let that fool you. This spell is terrible. Absolutely terrible, and it's because you have no control over it, and you can hurt yourself with it. You can hurt your hostages with it. Well, not your hostages, but the hostages you're trying to rescue. You get the idea. This spell has well more negative than positive. The positive is it's an area of effect. The negative is everything else I just mentioned. And here's the thing. I don't know how they would fix this spell in future patches. Like, do you make it so that it does more damage? Well, now, if you end up wandering into the blast radius, especially if you're playing as Invade or Celicy, then you're doing more damage to yourself with this stupid thing. And what if there are hostages? If you increase the amount of damage that this spell does, now there's even less of a chance that they're going to survive. Like, I really think this spell is just absolutely terrible. I see no reason to use this spell. It's so awful. Shield Generator. Summon a shield generator that gives 10 shield every second. I think the idea of this spell is sound. The idea of it is really good. But here's the problem. It doesn't just generate shield for you, like, wherever you are. You have to be standing in one of the 8 tiles directly around, in a circle directly around it. which means it has to be placed on your side of the field, which is going to block your movement space. And as good as shielding is, what's going to do you even more good when it comes to dodging enemy attacks is dodging enemy attacks. Shielding is like your second line of defense. Your movement is your first. And not only is this blocking your movement, but you have to be standing right next to it, which means you're not moving at all, basically, if you want that shield. And thirdly, it only has 80 HP. This is one of those spells that could greatly benefit if, one, you could place it wherever you wanted. So you could place it on your back row or like in a back corner where it wouldn't be that big of a deal. But more importantly, it needs to be able to survive long enough to give you that shielding. And thirdly, I would make it so that it generates that shield for you wherever you are on the field so you don't have to stand next to it. That's what I thought it was, and that would make this spell fantastic. As it is, I gotta put it down here. I'm sorry. I wish I could put that spell at a higher spot because, again, the idea is so sound, but then they complicated matters and made the spell so convoluted that you never want to touch it. I know I don't. Shotgun! Hit enemies in a small cone, hit 3 times on the first tile. It costs 2 mana, it does 100 damage, but if it's on that first tile, it does 300 damage. This is a common spell that has a lot of damage potential. Now, true, it only does that huge damage potential on 1 tile, and it's only the 1 tile right in front of you. But this does good damage to things that like to invade your space. It does good damage to enemies that like to come up right onto the front line. Riva comes to mind. This is, again, just a very solid spell. It can be difficult to use at times, but, you know, that's why you have spells like Pull or, you know, Undertow to move the enemies closer into range for it. Some enemies just like to come into range all on their own, like the spear-wielding guys, or, as I had mentioned before, Riva likes to come up to the front line. Terrible likes to just show up on your field and be like, I'm exploding things now. So, there are plenty of opportunities to use this. Now, against the gate, I would put it down here because you can't hit the gate with it. Everything else, though, and Seraph especially, because Seraph makes it so that there are no boundaries. It's just a 4x8 grid. Have fun. So she's really not difficult to hit with shotgun at all. So I'd say I put it up at A. The obvious drawbacks keep it out of reaching S, but it's still a good spell and one that I say is definitely worthwhile. Sidewinder. Fire a missile at a random enemy for each structure on the field. Only really good if you're summoning structures, which means it's only really good if you happen to be Hazel. She's the only one that naturally starts with structures. Everyone else, not so much. And it's only 50 damage per missile. I'm sorry, I don't get this spell. And just like with what is it called? Excavate. If the enemy just happens to be cheeky enough to, you know, move after you fired it, then all the missiles are going to miss. So, I don't know, not a lot of love for Sidewinder. I wanted to make it work, but when you're summoning structures, the things that are really working for you are just the structures themselves. Having to have something else to make this, like, the thing is, the action in One Step from Eden gets chaotic, and your structures tend not to last. So what you need to do is you either need to A, find a way to make your structures last, or B, be okay with the idea that they're just going to go eventually. Now, and with Sidewinder, you're banking on your structures essentially never going away, and that's, I'm sorry, just not going to happen. So, yeah, no love for Sidewinder here. Super Minigun. Fire 100 shots. The spell does consume, and it costs 4 mana. It does 2 damage per shot, but like I said, it's 100 shots. When you use this spell, don't bank on every shot hitting. It's the flavor text of this card says it all. Spray and pray. you are very unlikely to actually hit every shot with this, even with time slow and time stop. So what you can do is build up your spell power to make this worthwhile. Or put an upgrade on it, like 25% chance to leave a flame on hit. There's plenty of things you can do with Super Minigun, and actually the idea that it consumes actually isn't too terrible. Riku, be nice. Because when it comes back around, you're not essentially spraying. Well, it's not going to come back around, that's the point. You don't have to spray and pray with this one. But that's also a negative against it, because something like that you probably want to come around a second time. See, this is another one of those spells that I don't understand consuming, because it's not like all 100 shots are going to land on your enemy, especially if they move around a lot. Though I suppose I can see why they wanted it to consume, because firing 100 shots, that lasts a while. So it basically just gives you an unlimited offense. So I guess I see why it consumes. I may not like it, but I get it. Sweeper. Hit all enemy tiles in a sweeping pattern. So at most you're going to hit an enemy once or twice, and it's going to be for 60 damage. Yay. So the positives are it only costs 2 mana, and it does hit all enemy tiles. Like, you know those annoying like gunner enemies in the fire areas that basically go up one column, then the next, then the next, then the next? That's basically this spell. I don't know, I'm gonna put it at B. I've never really used it, so I don't know if there's any appeal to it. I know that you're not saving hostages with it. Not a chance. I don't know. I also get the feeling that against any boss, they're, like, unless you're fighting a boss that's just gonna sit still most of the time, I don't know. It'd be great against the gate, but that's a very specific scenario. That's all I really got on that one. I don't know. It's average spell. It's not awful. It's not terrible. Just very average. Self-defense turret, or turret SD, as they have it labeled. Summon a self-defense turret. Consume. Now, I thought that this had like 200 HP, but it's possible that it only has 100. But the idea is the same. When an enemy hits this, it unleashes not just a shot, but a volley of shots back into their face for a pretty decent amount of damage. I want to say it does like 100 to 120 damage if an enemy hits this. So, I love this spell. I very unironically love Self-Defense Turret. This is a turret that I can take with any character. And as Hazel, you can build Hazel specifically. You can build it up so it can take more abuse, and that also builds up its spell power so that it can fire off more powerful shots. I very unironically love Self-Defense Turret. My only issue with it is that it consumes. Why does this spell consume? Like, I don't understand, like looking over the wiki, it looks like Laser Turret no longer consumes, but I haven't seen that spell in a run in a while, so I don't know if that's the case or not. But yeah, I know Self-Defense Turret consumes, and I don't understand why. This is one of those spells that could be just a phenomenal way to help defend yourself and build up more damage on the enemy. As is, I'm still putting it at A, but if they ever decide to get rid of that consume, then it's going right up to S. That spell is fantastic. Volley. Fire a shot from each structure. Costs 1 mana, each shot does 100 damage. So there are some obvious combos with this, like you can drop a monument and then use volley, or drop a castle and then cast volley. But I mean, you get all the same things with Sidewinder. The only thing that makes me put volley at a higher spot is that it just fires the shots forward. So you don't have to worry about the homing property. You don't have to worry about them, hitting a specific target like Bombard. It just fires them straight in front. That having been said, you still need other structures for it, which, I don't know. Only reason why I'm putting it at C is because it's more usable than Sidewinder or Bombard. but for most characters, absolutely useless. Matter of fact, I'm just going to put it down at D, just so that we have the idea that for the most part, you're not getting a lot of use out of that spell. Lastly, Wall. Summon a wall. A wall. Here's a block. Yeah, wall. It costs 0, so it can block enemy shots. This is one of those spells that just it creates a feeling of safety when you use it. I don't know. I don't have a huge problem with wall, especially since it's free. More often than not, I don't take it. I also don't see it show up very often, so take that with a grain of salt. I guess, you know, whatever you can get done with that spell, by all means. If nothing else, it's a nice way to block off enemy movement, and yeah. Now, again, I would like the option to be able to place it in somewhere other than directly in front of you. And I think that actually boils down to the design decision of the game itself. I think it's the same thing with Shield Gen. They wanted every spell to feel quick and snappy and just on with the show. But I wouldn't mind, like, if when you go to cast the spell, you hold down the button and your character sits still for a little, like while you're holding down the button, so you get to choose where it goes, and then you let go of the button and it throws it to that spot. That would make both that and Shield Gen and a lot of these things much, much more useful, instead of just plopping it down right in front of you. And I would also say, with that same principle in mind, allow us to throw out, you know, Boss Hazel's flamethrower turrets that just rain flames down onto the enemy side of the field. I don't know why that's not a spell. And like I said, I think what they should do with these summons and structures is let us hold down the spell button for the spell itself, and then instead of moving, you target with it, and then when you let go of the button, then it casts the spell to that spot and you can move around again. Makes sense to me. But yeah, between that idea and some of these turrets that, you know, consume when I really think they shouldn't, I think there's a lot of potential for Hexawan and a lot of really interesting builds that essentially make it so that you just have a passive helper sitting around doing things. I don't understand why some of the things consume, though. Why does this consume? It doesn't make sense. The whole point is to set up a defense, and you can only do it once? What gives with that? Why does Castle consume? For 5 mana, and, you know, when things like Sunshine, like, I understand why that consumes, but that still costs 4. And, you know, it's not like the turrets stay up forever. They can still be attacked. So let this not consume. This would make this spell so much more usable. The whole idea is to set up a fortress-like defense. Just let us do that. I don't know, that's just my opinion, and subsequently that brings us to the end of the Hexawan tier list. So thank you very much for watching. Let me know what your thoughts are on this particular list. Let me know if you agree with my thoughts on some of the things that maybe should or shouldn't consume. Let me know if you agree with me on, you know, the idea of being able to throw something wherever you want it. I think it all makes good sense, but, you know, it's also possible that I'm mad. I never rule out that possibility. So let me guys know what you think in the comments below. Drop me a like, leave me a comment. It all helps out the metrics. And I will be back with some more stuff in the near future. You guys take care of yourselves. My name is Dark Sage Walker, and I will be seeing you